Okay, these are the general equations and their characteristics for sine, cosine. Sorry you missed the front part of the video. Apply the transformations in this order when graphing. It's so important that you do it in this order so that you don't make mistakes. We start with the vertical shift every time. And we are going to look at example B. Can anybody look at example B and identify the vertical shift? 2. When you see a vertical shift, move the whole graph up or down that many units. So, here's what I do. You told me that the vertical shift was 2. Okay? So what I do is I mark off 2 units. That was not very good, was it? I'm going to put an axis. This is the axis of rotation. So instead of going up and down on the x-axis, it goes up and down on this. Okay? 2 units. Everybody okay with that? Second of all, we identify the amplitude. Absolute value of A, and we mark the max and min. Who can look at this graph and tell me what the amplitude is? 3. Okay, people don't understand this next part, and I don't know why. Okay, so the toughest thing as a teacher, when people don't understand something, you don't know why, it's like, well, shoot, how do I teach it? From this spot, the amplitude is 3. So that means I'm going to go up 3 units from this spot, and I'm going to go down 3 units from this spot. So if I'm at 2 and I go up 3 units, what's the biggest spot I get to? 5. Everybody clear? 3, 4, 5. I'm at 2. I don't go just up 3. I also go down 3. If I go down 3, that brings me to -1. Is there any question how I came up with 5 and -1? From the vertical shift, I go up 3 and down 3. You see that? That's your max and your min. We all okay with that? Sweet. Cool. We're just about ready to go then. You felt like I was shouting at you. It's 4-Code Wednesday. Yeah, we're twinning. We're friends. Yeah, well, I'm a professional. I get paid, so. No, I don't edit this part. This is what people tune into. This is people pay big money to hear this on YouTube. They're like, wow. Yeah, it's on YouTube. Like the whole world can see this. We could tune in right afterwards. It doesn't, it like records this. Like right now, you can see there's nothing on the board. Like right now, they're going to get a snack. They're like, I might as well, like, you know, get a candy bar or something while this video is just taking forever. Or maybe just fast forward to the good part where we actually do math. But yeah, like if I say, Courtney, shut up and pay attention, like they hear that. You know what I mean? Or is it, Courtney, don't flick me off anymore. Courtney, stop doing drugs in the back of class. Okay, like they would hear that. Of course, that never happens. You know what I mean? But like they would hear that. So, you good? All right. See how it works. All right. So the period, you take 2 pi and divide it by b. What is the b value? 1. 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. Once I find the period, I mark it off into how many spots do I divide it up into? 4. Why 4 parts? How many quadrants are there? There's four quadrants. It takes sine a full rotation around the unit circle to go through its progression. So I'm going to divide this into 4 parts. What's half of 2 pi? Pi. Half of pi. Pi over 2. What's the other mark? 3 pi over 2. Other side, I do the same thing. Negative pi over 2, negative 3 pi over 2. Last part. Before you do the horizontal shift, stop. Make a ghost graph first. Now, here's what we're fortunate about in this example is why I chose to do it first. To find the horizontal shift here, we just take x and set it equal to 0, and we find, oh, there's no horizontal shift. Okay? Here, there's a horizontal shift. If you take x minus pi over 4 and set it equal to 0, what is x? Pi over 4. So that means that there's a horizontal shift to pi over 4 for this one. For this one, there's no horizontal shift. So we could just start graphing it. But if there is a horizontal shift, make life easier on yourself and start with a ghost graph. You're like, what the heck is a ghost graph? I'll show you in just a second. Okay, we're ready to graph it. Our graph is entirely outlined for us. You just have to decide, where do I start and where do I move my points? It's cosine. Does cosine start in the middle, or will it start at the max or min? Which spot do you think? It starts at the maximum. Cosine does not start at the middle, starts at the max or min. Because it's positive, starts at the max. You guys are smart. Now where? Down, it crosses over the axis. Then where? Down to -1. Then back up through the middle. Then the top. You got the hiccups again? You got the hiccups again? Last week and the week before that, you're like the hiccup queen. All right. So then we just go backwards and we do the exact same progression, and you can see the shape that you get. Yo. Okay, excellent question. Why won't we do x plus 2? We said the plus 2 is on the outside. So when you have the parentheses, you talk about the inside. You got that? Okay. Everybody good with that first graph? Okay, this is the hardest content that you're going to have on the test. So if you can do this, you're in good shape. Let's do one more here, okay? And then we'll move to a couple examples on our worksheet. We have we start with the vertical shift, then we do the amplitude, then we do the period, then we do the horizontal shift. Is there a vertical shift here? No. There's no plus something on the outside, so there's no vertical shift. So I'm just on the x-axis. What's the amplitude? 1. It's just the absolute value number in front of sine. That was super easy. So what's the maximum value I have? 1. Minimum value? -1. Period. 2 pi divided by b. B is the value in front of x. What's period? 2 pi, just like the last one. Try and keep it easy here. Try something more difficult in a second. So I can mark off 2 pi and -2 pi. I know that marking off these period values really kind of gets old after a while, but you're not going to have to do it too much longer. Next Friday, you're done with your semester. Which I have to say, you guys, I really enjoyed having your class. I mean, I'm going to recommend that we do the class next year, you know, because we can encourage you to get rid of it or stick with it. But big piece for you guys is that overall your attendance is pretty good. I can't stand offering classes when attendance is not good. I mean, it's not perfect, but man, I had one time I had a 7th hour class of kind of this scenario, and by the end of the semester, there were almost 300 absences from that 7th hour class period. Now some of them were sports related, but trust me, they weren't all sports related. That gets pretty old. Try to figure out how to teach that. That's pretty difficult. All right, so I got it sketched here. Is there a horizontal shift? What is it? Pi over 4. But before I do the horizontal shift, I'm going to sketch a ghost graph. I'm going to sketch the graph of what it would look like without the horizontal shift. So I'm going to sketch it with those three without the horizontal shift, and you'll be able to see why here in a second. It's sine. So does it start at the max, min, or middle? Middle. Is it going to start by going up or down? Up. And I make a dotted line. This is your ghost graph. It's not the actual graph. This is just going to be the graph that tells me how to get the real graph. Now I can apply the horizontal shift. The horizontal shift is pi over 4. How much is pi over 4 in comparison to one of these tick marks? It's half of it. So Moyer sees that a whole tick mark is pi over 2. So half of that would be pi over 4. So what I want to do is I'm going to take each one of these dots I put down, and I'm going to move it to the right pi over 4 units. Just going to take each one of these marks that I made earlier and move it over half of a tick mark. Now, it doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be enough for me to tell what you're doing. And that way, when I then go to sketch the graph, it should look identical to the ghost graph. It would just be shifted to the right pi over 4 units. And I think that looks pretty cool. You could definitely tell the difference between the two, can't you? Courtney, your thoughts on the graph? Courtney says it's pretty neat. Thank you, Courtney. YouTube has recorded your answer. Be there forever. What do you think? Not too bad? Let's try 2 problems on your worksheet together and get started on that, okay? So you guys got a nice... Okay, you guys are starting to get it. We turn to your worksheet. We first identify the vertical shift. Reduce example here. What's vertical shift? 1. Yeah, I'm videotaping. You okay with that? Okay. All right. Stop yelling at everybody. Okay. So we're going to mark off 1 unit, and I put my axis of rotation right through that 1 unit. Folks, you have to stop me if there's something where you're like, shoot, I don't get how you just got to that spot. Amplitude. 2. If the amplitude is 2, then I go 2 units up and 2 units down. If I go 2 units up, where's that going to bring me to? 3. So the maximum value is 3. What's the minimum value? -1. Courtney, do you see that? So you guys, right now I have the vertical part of my graph determined. Okay, now I'm going to do the horizontal. I start with the period. Period is 2 pi divided by 1. That's just 2 pi. So we're going to mark that off. 2 pi, -2 pi, pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Give you a little bit to get caught up with that. Is there a horizontal shift? There is. And I'm going to wait to do the horizontal shift. I'm going to do the ghost graph first. Time to go with the ghost graph. It's sine. Where does it start? Max, min, or middle? Middle. Is it going to start by going up or down? Up. So I go up to 3. Cross back over that axis. Drop down to -1. Back up to the middle. If I go in reverse, I go down to -1. Up to the middle. Up to the max. Down to the middle. I draw a bunch of little dotted marks. All right, you guys are super smart, and you told me that this has a horizontal shift. What's the horizontal shift? Pi over 4. Awesome. Shift of pi over 4. We just did a problem like this. How does pi over 4 compare to 1 tick mark? Half of a tick mark. So I take all of these points, and I move them half of a tick mark to the right. Courtney, what do you think of my graph? Moira, what do you think of my graph? Emily, what do you think of my graph? I think it's fantastic. Oh, Smartboard's a cool thing. Good. So I know the video's getting a little long, but the fact is when we do this difficult content, we got to make sure that we're able to, see all the necessary examples. If you can do this one, this is the most difficult kind of problem. Okay, we got all 4 transformations happening here. Can we handle it? Let's start with the order in which we laid it out. Vertical shift. -2. I'm going down 2 units. Amplitude. 2. Amplitude is always positive. It's the absolute value of the number in front. So if I'm sitting here at -2 and I go up 2, that would bring me to 0. So 0 is the maximum value. If I'm at -2 and I go down 2, that would bring me to -4 is the minimum value. Any question about how I set up the vertical portion of this graph? Okay, period. 2 pi divided by 3. Oof. It's kind of ugly. 2 pi over 3, -2 pi over 3. Anybody know what half of 2 pi over 3 is? It's kind of challenging to think about, isn't it? 2 pi over 6, which is? Watch, guys. If you want to take 2 pi over 3 and you want to divide it in half, or you want to divide it by 2, that's the same as multiplying by 1/2, right? So we multiply it by 1/2. The 2's cancel, leaving you with? So pi over 3 is half. Now I got to take pi over 3 and I divide it in 2. So pi over 3 times 1/2. What's pi over 3 times 1/2? Pi over 6. So half of pi over 3 is pi over 6. Do you remember how I get the third mark? Multiply the first one by 3. 3 times pi over 6 is 3 pi over 6, which is the same as pi over 2. Okay, we've got the period marked out. Does this have a horizontal shift? It does. So we'll do the ghost graph first, then we'll apply the horizontal shift. This is cosine. Does it start at the max, min, or middle? Cosine wants to start at the max, except it's negative, so it starts at the minimum. It's already at the minimum, so it has to go up. So it goes to -2, then it goes to 0, -2, -4. Are we okay with that? How do I find the horizontal shift? Take the inside and do what with it? Set it equal to 0. 3x plus pi is equal to 0. How do I solve for x? What would I do to both sides? Subtract pi, so I get 3x is equal to -pi. Divide by 3. X is -pi over 3. What do you notice about this horizontal shift compared to the other ones we've done before? It's negative. So do you think I move it to the right or the left? I move it to the left. How much of a tick mark is pi over 3? Is pi over 3 more than one tick mark or less than one tick mark? It's more. How many tick marks is it? It's 2 tick marks. So I got to take every single one of these points. I got to move it over 2 tick marks. Oh, thank you. I ate a bowl of stupid for lunch. I see some questions, but nobody's talking. I need a question. Okay, I'll start again. So I'm going to take this point. This is the bottom, right? And I can move it over 1, 2 tick marks. Then I'm going to go to my next point. I'm going to move it over 1, 2 tick marks. You don't have to keep on doing that. Once you do like a couple, you can then just start to build the pattern. You know what I mean? Like once you do a couple of them, then just build the pattern. And that would be by far the most challenging one that you would see. But that's the graph of -2 cosine of 3x plus pi minus 2. And you guys should feel pretty proud because if I told you at the beginning of this year that you would graph a function like that, you'd say you're nuts. That's just about impossible to do, and yet we were able to do it pretty efficiently and quickly. So you've got 20 minutes. I don't want you to do all 8 problems. Do 6. Cross 2 of them out that you don't want to do. Make sure you start checking your answers on the board. Let me ask you for help. You can do it. I believe in you. If you can get this worksheet today, you get an A on the next test. The next stuff we cover is super easy.